What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another New York Giants video. And in this video, I'm going to preview free agency for Big Blue. It is day one and not much has happened. It's day one of the tampering period, that is. None of these deals that are being signed and agreed to can officially be put through until Wednesday when the season begins. Folks, have a lot to talk about here today. Before I get into that, make sure to go follow us, please, on all of our social media accounts if you like what you watch, at our YouTube channel at Big Blue Avenue, and on Instagram and Twitter at Big Blue Avenue as well. So, free agency preview. I'm going to go over a few positions that I think the Giants could use in free agency, and I'm going to base this off of the salary that we have. Obviously, the Giants do not have much money to work with because the Giants overspent by a wide margin last offseason. That has left us in this position. So Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll kind of have their hands full when it comes to the 2022 free agent market. They have to be very calculated in their approach, and as expected, the Giants have not made any relative moves today. The only two moves the New York Giants have made so far is they brought back C.J. Board on a one-year deal, who will now be on his third year with the New York Giants, and they signed Robert Foster, wide receiver, former Buffalo Bill, also played at the University of Alabama. And I'll talk about Board and Foster just for a moment. So Board returning for his third year with the team, missed a good chunk of last year with an injury. Board was a favorite under Joe Judge's coaching staff, and they liked him a lot. He was one of the team favorites. And I'm going to talk more about Robert Foster now, who you folks probably don't know as much about. 6'2", 195 pounds, played for Daboll both with the Bills and in college at Alabama. Daboll was the offensive coordinator for Foster's final season with the Crimson Tide back in 2017. That season, Foster had 14 catches, 174 yards, and one score. In 2021, Foster did not play. He spent most of the season on the Cowboys practice squad after being waived by the Buffalo Bills. Now, let's go over his timeline so far since being in the NFL. Foster, he's played in 30 regular season games with 7 starts, coming in the years 2018 and 2019 for the Buffalo Bills, along with 2020 when he was with the Washington football team. Throughout his career, 32 catches for 642 yards and 3 touchdowns. So not bad for 3+ years. And I say 3+ because he didn't play last year. So it's interesting, right? He played in a playoff game. He joined the Bills as an undrafted rookie back in 2018, so he wasn't drafted. And in 2018 was where he really had his best moments. He had career-high totals of 27 catches, over 540 receiving yards, and 3 touchdowns. Now, that was Josh Allen's rookie year. He had 3 100-yard games that year as well. So this is a guy who has potential. The Bills released him, as I mentioned previously, at the end of training camp in 2020. So Robert Foster is now a New York Giant and joins this receiving corps that is pretty much retaining everybody from last year, from the wide receiver position, that is, except for probably John Ross. So now that I've gone over that, I want to preview a few players and make some predictions as to what I think the Giants will do, taking into account all the moves that have been made today in day one of this tampering period. So my free agency wish list, I would like the Giants to re-sign 2 players that have not been re-signed already. I'd like them to keep Austin Johnson for a 3rd year. I'd like them to re-sign the long snapper Casey Kreider. And the reason why I did not want to let Riley Dixon go is because of his connection with Casey Kreider. And Riley Dixon was always perfect when holding the ball on field goals, and he wasn't as bad of a punter as people are making him out to be. That may be a minority opinion, but I'll stand with that opinion. I really think he was a better punter than what the numbers showed this season, because a lot of his punts in 2021 and 2020 were coming from within his own end zone, where Pat Shurmur's offense in 2019 was a little bit better. Not a little bit, much better. But let's get into the logistics. So Johnson and Kreider, I hope will stay. I don't know if they're bringing Austin Johnson back for a 3rd year, though. He had a really good year last season, and he might be able to make more money elsewhere, considering we have a new defensive coordinator in Wink Martindale. Now, the Giants will have to decide what they want to do with James Bradberry before Wednesday. And ultimately, I think the Giants are going to be moving him or releasing him. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. Now, there's three positions in particular I think the Giants need to target in free agency, and all cost-effective positions. Starting guard, backup quarterback, and a number 2 tight end. If we can at least nail 2 of those 3, I think the Giants will be okay moving into the draft. Ideally, all 3 would be nice, but I'm going to roll over some of the names that I think would fit well in Big Blue. And we'll start with the guards first. And this guy, I think, is a name that, some people have been interested in, and it's James Daniels, a 2018 second-round pick of the Chicago Bears who played all 17 games this past season, making 48 career starts, primarily a left guard, which is what the Giants need, either a left or a right guard. And he's only 24 years old coming off his rookie deal. So he's still a young player. And he's played 100% of offensive snaps in the years 2019 and 2021. And the Bears, who had a relatively poor offensive line, this guy was the lone bright spot. Now, could he be a little bit out of the Giants' financial reach? Yes. Will he have better offers on the table? Probably. But this is one of the guys that I think could be an option for the Giants at the guard position. He allowed 3 sacks on over 1,100 snaps in 2021, so not bad, and a 71 overall Pro Football Focus grade. I think Daniels is a solid run blocker who has good footwork and can be essential in this Giants front to help protect Daniel Jones. And this is a guy I'd like to have. A guy I'd love to have is Mark Glowinski. Mark Glowinski is 29 years old. He's a 4th-round draft pick by the Seattle Seahawks in 2015, spent his first 3 years with the Seahawks, last 4 with the Indianapolis Colts. So he's played 7 years now in the NFL. Back in late 2017, began 2018 as a backup, but then was named the starting right guard in Week 6 following a season-ending injury to guard Matt Lawson. Glowinski then played well enough to earn himself a 3-year, $18 million contract extension. Started all 16 games in 2019 and 2020, primarily at the right guard position, which is the one particular position on the line I think the Giants are having the most issues with filling. I think left guard, you can argue that can be Shane Lemieux next season. It could be Nick Gates if he's healthy. It could be a combination. Who knows? I think right guard is a position you definitely need to fill. Glowinski this past season had 843 offensive snaps, only 2 penalties and 2 sacks allowed this past season. And the reason why I don't think the Colts will be retaining Glowinski is because their offensive line is so good and they can't pay everybody, right? They have Quentin Nelson. They have Ryan Kelly. They have really good players on that front. I think Mark Glowinski becomes slightly expendable to them due to their cap situation. And, it's hard to keep that same group of 5 guys in place for so long. So I think Glowinski could fall into the lap of Big Blue. And this is my favorite. This is the guy that I want to see on the Giants most. Next up, Austin Corbett from the Los Angeles Rams. Now, this is another guy who is technically speaking coming off his rookie contract. And I say that because he was a 2nd-round draft pick by the Browns in 2018. The Browns then traded him to the Rams in 2019 in exchange for a 5th-round pick. This past season, Corbett started all 17 games at the right guard position and earned a 68.8 PFF grade. Again, this is a guy who is a decent pass blocker, a good run blocker, and I think he would be a good fit on a poor Giants offensive line. I personally think that, playing with a Super Bowl caliber offense this year in the Rams, being able to acquire Austin Corbett would be awesome for Giants Nation. Now, there's 2 more names that I'm going to go over, and one has a pure connection with Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll and offensive line coach Bobby Johnson, and it is John Feliciano. Feliciano is a guy who was a 4th-round draft pick by the Raiders back in 2015. In 2019, he signed a 2-year, $8 million deal with the Buffalo Bills coming off his rookie contract. This guy has versatility. He can start at left guard, and he can start at right guard. The one issue I have with Feliciano is that he's dealt with shoulder, pectoral, and calf injuries all in each of the last 2 seasons. Last offseason, Feliciano got a 3-year, $17 million extension with Brandon Beane and the Buffalo Bills. But he was released by the Bills a week ago, and he only played in 9 games last year, starting only 6. I think this could be a realistic option for the Giants because of his injury past. His value is not as high right now, but Feliciano is still better than any guard the Giants currently have on their roster, and that includes Shane Lemieux, in my opinion. Also, fun fact, he is from East Meadow, New York, so he is a native New Yorker. He is from the Long Island area, and last year, I know it was a small sample size, but a good stat, 0 sacks allowed and 442 offensive snaps. Now, that is not a high sample size, but a guard should not be giving up more than 3-4 sacks a season, right? And guards don't need to be great on an NFL roster. They need to be adequate. They need to be average to above average. They need to be productive. That's what you're looking for in a good guard. And I think John Feliciano can obviously fit that bill. And I think he's one of the 2 favorites for the Giants to sign at this position. Next up, the backup quarterback position. As all of you know, backup quarterback was a huge issue for the Giants this past season. After they let Colt McCoy go, they signed Mike Glennon due to money, and Daniel Jones was hurt again. He missed about a third of the games this past season, and the Giants' offense was non existent without him on the football field. I want to go over 4 names, 3 actually, that I think could be a good fit to be the backup quarterback for Daniel Jones and the New York Football Giants. And I said 4 originally because Colt McCoy was on that list, but he was re-signed today by the Arizona Cardinals. So it's very, very unfortunate that a Giants reunion with Colt McCoy will not be happening. The first guy that I think, and by the way, Mitch Trubisky signs with the Pittsburgh Steelers, so he's off the table now as well. I think Trubisky didn't want to come to New York because of the possibility of having to battle it out with Daniel Jones, as we're in Pittsburgh, he has a clear edge over Mason Rudolph. First up, Chad Henne. Chad Henne was a second-round pick by the Dolphins in 2008. Now he's 36 years old, and again, I don't view that as an issue when it comes to a backup quarterback. This guy spent the last 4 seasons backing up Patrick Mahomes. The Giants' new offensive coordinator is Mike Kafka, coming over from the Kansas City Chiefs, who was their quarterback's coach, who was directly working with Patrick Mahomes and Chad Henne. Throughout Henne's career, he's thrown over 13,000 passing yards with over 54 starts. That connection with Kafka is something that I find very interesting, and the Giants showed interest in this guy 2 to 3 years back. Henne did not show that much interest in the Giants back then, though, so we will see what happens with that. Next up, I have Case Keenum. Case Keenum went undrafted in 2012, a little bit younger at 34 years old, played 3 years for the Texans, 2 for the Rams, and of course, he's most notoriously known for his 1 year with the Minnesota Vikings back in 2017, leading them to an NFC championship game. That earned him a nice contract with the Denver Broncos in 2018, where he started all 16 games. Then the following year, went to formerly known as Washington Redskins, playing in 10 games, starting at 8, and spent the last 2 seasons with the Browns as a backup for Baker Mayfield. Case Keenum is a guy I would love to have personally for the Giants. I think he'd be a good cost-effective option. I think he'd be a solid backup behind Daniel Jones. But the Giants did come out and say they're looking for mobility in their next backup quarterback, because obviously they did not have that with Mike Glennon last year, and knowing Daniel Jones' history, you have to be prepared. My next option is Jacoby Brissett. And this is the guy I'm leaning towards because Brissett, drafted by the Patriots in 2016, he's 29 years old, 3rd-round pick, was traded to the Colts back in 2017 and then started when Andrew Luck, out of the blue, retired in 2019 and had a pretty good season for them. Signed a 1-year deal with the Dolphins last year in 2021, started 5 games playing in 10, and this guy has 27 career starts. So I think this is a guy that would be the best fit for the Giants' backup quarterback position at this time. I'd go with either him or Chad Henne. Those are my top 2 options. Another name, too, I've heard around is Marcus Mariota. I don't know how well that would go, but I like Brissett, Henne, and Keenum Moving on to tight ends. I have three options here as well. I think a backup tight end is important. Right now, the Giants don't really have any tight ends on their roster, right? Evan Ingram just signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I believe it was a 1-year, $10 million deal. Kyle Rudolph was cut a week or two ago, and then Caden Smith was waived last week. So the Giants are now without any tight ends, and I think they wanted to keep Caden Smith, but he failed his physical because of the knee injury he suffered this past season. First option at tight end that I would love the Giants to have is Tyler Conklin. Now, let's be real. I think the Giants are drafting their tight end of the future, but you want to pair him with a veteran who is polished in the NFL, and Tyler Conklin is an interesting guy. Fifth-round pick by the Vikings in 2018 stated he would love to return to Minnesota. Will it financially be in the cards? I'm not so sure, but at the age of 26, set career highs this past year on a contract year with 61 catches, 593 yards, and 3 scores. And that is partially due to the fact that the Minnesota Vikings starting tight end suffered an injury before the season began in Irv Smith Jr. Primarily a backup in Conklin's first 3 seasons, Conklin is known to be an outstanding run blocker who can fit the bill for that Caden Smith role, and he could also catch 60 passes a year, as I just told you. So if the Giants draft a rookie in the mid-rounds this year, you could, and if you want to run 12 personnel, which I don't know if that'll be utilized often in Kafka's offense, or Dable's offense, whoever calls plays, Conklin can be a nice option for Daniel Jones. And you got to have good blockers as well for tight ends, something Evan Ingram was not. Next up, I have Hayden Hurst. Hayden Hurst was a first-round draft pick by the Baltimore Ravens back in 2018, traded to the Falcons in 2020, where he played in all 16 games, scoring 6 touchdowns. Took a backseat to Kyle Pitts this past season in 2021. 13 games played for Hurst, starting just 5. Still managed to get 3 touchdown receptions and has 12 career touchdowns in 4 seasons. I think Hurst has much more upside than Tyler Conklin, and I think he can do everything well. I think he can block well. I think he can catch well. I think he's a more polished route runner than Tyler Conklin, but his price range is probably going to be too high for what the Giants are looking for, unless this is the only move they make of significance in free agency. And then they could potentially afford him. If the Giants deal away with the James Bradbury contract, then Hayden Hurst is definitely on the table. My last tight end, third option, Max Williams from the Arizona Cardinals. 2015 second-round draft pick by the Ravens as well. Ravens love drafting tight ends. Williams is 27, played 4 years in Baltimore, spent his last 3 with the Arizona Cardinals. He was the Cardinals' starting tight end this past season, but he tore his ACL in Week 5, so he is dealing with that coming off an injury. But in the 5 games he started, 16 catches, 193 yards, and 1 score. Will the Giants want to take a risk on an injury-prone player? I'm not so sure, but I think his run blocking is exceptional, and he can catch passes when needed to. None of these guys are notorious for drops either, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. So far, we went over the guard position, the backup quarterback position, and the backup tight end position, the number 2 tight end. And any of these 3 guys could start for the Giants in 2022 if they want that to be the case. But I would much prefer to sign a tight end 2 in free agency and draft a future tight end 1 in the draft. So I do have a couple other options that I would tell you folks to be prepared for the Giants to possibly sign that have connections to Shane, Dable, Martindale, Kafka, whoever it may be. There's 4 players. And the first one I want to go over, don't be shocked if the Giants go after Jerry Hughes. Jerry Hughes, he's an older player. He started every game for the Bills since 2014, has 58 career sacks after spending his first 3 seasons with the Colts. And I think you need a veteran edge rusher on this team, right? You have all this youth with Azeez Ojulari, Ellerson Smith, O'Shane Zimenez. I know Carter is probably gone. But you have a lot of good young talent in the edge rushing room. I think a veteran is what's missing, right? You have Leonard Williams, who plays more of the 4-eye. He doesn't really play, Leonard Williams plays the 3-tech position, right? So Jerry Hughes could be an option. as an edge rusher. Another guy, Harrison Phillips, defensive tackle. 2018 second-round pick by the Buffalo Bills. So he's coming off his rookie deal. Had his first career sack against Eli Manning in 2019. And this past season, he played in 14 games, starting 8. Had a good amount of tackles with 4 tackles for loss, 6 quarterback hits, and 1 sack. I think this could be a good backup defensive tackle option that will be cheaper than Austin Johnson. And I think Harrison Phillips would be a huge upgrade over Danny Shelton. The Giants could also draft a defensive tackle this season as well to pair with Harrison Phillips, or Phillips to be the backup too. So I think Phillips could be an option on the table. 2 more, and they're inside linebackers. First up, Chris Board from the Baltimore Ravens. Played in Wink's scheme. He fits the bill as a good backup special teams linebacker, cost-effective option. I like him. The other is LJ Fort. Older guy, 32 years of age, made some really nice plays for the Ravens this season. He's been around the league for a long time. He's been a journeyman, played on a lot of different teams. But again, another Wink Martindale linebacker, and I think Wink is going to try to bring some of Baltimore with him to the Giants defense. So be prepared for Wink and Dable to potentially, bring guys that they know. Same thing with Mike Kafka. If they go after Chad Henne, who knows what the Giants are going to do. So those are the names that I have. And folks, before I end this video and make my official prediction, we want to remind you all that we are partnering with BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook, serving customers for 25 plus years. Bet on all your favorite sports. You can use our promo code below at JOIN125. That is JOIN125 on our banner there, where you can get a 125% sign-up bonus up to $2,500. You can bet on the go, anytime, anywhere, on your mobile device, and you can get fast payouts as well, which is awesome with live betting. Get the earliest and best lines. That is BetUS, where the game begins. And folks, without further ado, let's go Big Blue. Happy free agency, guys.